Hi, soulful beings. Welcome to Sitting with Ourselves. This podcast space is for the deep discussions and reflections on many different aspects and areas about life and ourselves. From psychology, mental health and well-being, to philosophy, life theories and concepts, and topics related to our society and beyond our world on Earth, we'll have conscious conversations with thought-provoking perspectives. This is our place of being, healing, and staying grounded with our souls. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Sitting with Ourselves. If you listened to my previous episode, I mentioned a topic for a future episode that would be fun to talk about, and an idea that requires further expansion on than just the surface and simple statement. I guess that future episode came early than expected because today we are going to talk about the popular quote or phrase that money can't buy happiness. Now, we do know that money can buy happiness, but it also doesn't only on its own. Let's elaborate on that. As I mentioned in my last episode, short single statements like these can be quite simplified and one-directional in what one idea they may be trying to say through this. They tend to be very simple to convey one main idea, but don't think about the other side or what they mean further. The reason for this might also be because shorter is more memorable and catchy. So at the same time, however, this can be somewhat misleading. So it doesn't necessarily give a chance for extending the why behind the quote's meaning or what other potential ideas there are to this. It's one of those quote/phrases where you hear it in its first part, but sometimes don't go on to hear the second part that expands on it. I've heard other examples like jack of all trades, master of none, and people only hear the first part and take that idea in mind with them. However, did you know that the quote wasn't finished there? The second part is often forgotten and continues to, but oftentimes better than a master of one. So altogether that would be jack of all trades, master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. Now that changes the idea and message you get from that quote a lot, with another perspective or more extensions on that idea. So, now going back to the quote that money doesn't buy happiness, money can't buy happiness, we forget there is a second part to this idea as well, and more detail needs to be added to not be looking at only one side of this. There are many versions of the second part, but they give similar ideas deferring to the first part of the quote alone. For example, we have variations like money can't buy happiness, but neither can poverty by Leo Roston. But it does bring you a more pleasant form of misery, Spike Milligan. But it does make it possible for you to enjoy the best that the world has to offer, George S. Clason. But the absence of money can cause you unhappiness, but it can make you awfully comfortable while being miserable, Claire Booth. But it will go a long way in helping you. If you took the first part as it was, that money doesn't or can't buy happiness, people will also argue that yes it does and that's not true, as well as no it doesn't because you can't be happy with only having lots of money. Again, this is simplified. When I read that statement alone, not thinking about anything else, it's solely a singular-sided argument, so responding to that quote itself with a standalone idea, my personal thoughts on this topic is that I would disagree with that part because money does buy happiness. It can buy happiness. And this, depending on how you spend it and in consideration to money not being the sole focus and center of your life, but perhaps rather using it as a tool. Not sure if that's the right word, but using it as a tool in life to live more comfortably and enjoy things that needs money. However, when you specify that money itself can't buy happiness, I agree then. Because I definitely believe money buys happiness depending on how you use it and what you spend it on. Whether that be on memorable experiences, trips with loved ones, being able to spend for fun, enjoyment and entertainment, delicious food and meals out, affording basic needs to live comfortably and not having financial difficulties or having to worry about how much you have. This can also link to the scarcity mindset with money. But if money is the only thing you have and you don't have quality relationships in your life or neglect these, and you're not looking after your mental and physical health and well-being, and the only thing you care about is money, spending it on things that don't bring you joy, or for example, at least very superficial and materialistic things that only bring you a momentary short-term satisfaction and gratification from purchasing something, then getting it and that ending there, money itself, and spent in such ways probably won't buy or bring you happiness. Once that moment is over and that temporary feel-good feeling is gone, people tend to go looking for more, and it can keep going in a cycle like that, continuing to want and buy more, going on repeat. You obviously shouldn't only care about money because there are things money cannot buy. For example, money can't buy true love, true friends, and time. As quoted by Richard Davis, money can't buy peace of mind, it can't heal ruptured relationships or build meaning into a life that has none. In relation to these examples, money obviously can't buy everything. Money can and can't buy happiness in many different ways depending on what you talk about and in what ways you argue for this quote. This is why you can't be vague in explanations, and you need to specify that what exactly is it, and in what circumstances is this more true and less true. And who said you had to be super rich? What if you just want to have enough to be comfortable and not worry that you're spending too much, or having that scarcity mindset that you don't have enough or have to settle for less because of money holding you back from what you need and want to get? Everyone will have a different view on what they define as being financially free, stable, or content, and what it looks like for them in terms of how much money will bring them contentment or, quote, happiness to live their life or the life they want. Here's another quote related to money and happiness, although this perspective is touching more on money cannot buy you happiness. Riches do not confer happiness. I have lost count of the number of friends, lovers, and acquaintances I have told this to, especially when I first passed 7 notes of cash in hand. I don't bother anymore. The incredulous look on their face is always the same. Still, let me repeat it one more time. Becoming rich does not guarantee happiness. In fact, it is almost certain to impose the opposite condition, if not from the stresses and strains of protecting wealth, then from the guilt that inevitably accompanies its arrival. Felix Dennis. Money in itself, as the literal numbers and physical tangible object of what money is, also cannot satisfy you forever, as there would be a certain point where, once you reach a certain amount, it doesn't make a difference to your happiness. Income has been associated with happiness through numerous studies. One study by Jeb et al. 2018 examined whether happiness rises indefinitely with income, or if there is a point whereby higher incomes no longer lead to greater well-being and happiness. There was a positive correlation between income and happiness, but this relationship varied significantly by country and region. The research identifies a satiation point, meaning a fulfillment or satisfaction point, beyond which additional income yields diminishing returns in terms of happiness. This means that after reaching a certain income level, increases in income do not correspond to increases in happiness. And I'm quoting now, globally they found that satiation occurs at $95,000 for life evaluation and $60,000 to $75,000 for emotional well-being. However, there is substantial variation across world regions, with satiation occurring later in wealthier regions. They also found that in certain parts of the world, incomes beyond satiation are associated with lower life evaluations. Specific income thresholds could serve as a turning point for happiness, which indicates that individuals' perceptions of happiness change at different income levels. And just noting that the study was done in 2018, which is different to 2024 in terms of the income that they've mentioned. Killingsworth et al., and this is a 2023 study, showed that when looking at those making less than $100,000 per year, the unhappiest Americans are more unhappy as income decreases, but once you earn above that threshold, unhappiness becomes unrelated to income. Once income crosses $100,000 annually, the level of predicted peak happiness grows even faster. So basically, as income increased, so did positive feelings and life satisfaction. I can't forget to mention about the well-known 2010 study by Kahneman and Diener, sorry my pronunciation of the names, who found that happiness increased with income, but also that this was only up to a certain point. Above $75,000, and today that would be around like $108,000, there was no further progress or increase in happiness after that. They suggested that this was because, and I quote, satisfying basic needs is challenging at lower income levels, and those daily challenges negatively impact happiness. Lack of money is associated with stress, poorer health, less leisure time, and greater emotional pain. But once people make enough to move beyond meeting their basic needs and can afford things like a house and a car, take vacations, and gain financial security through savings, then making more money doesn't move the happiness needle. Their theory is that above $75,000 of income, or $108,000 today, happiness is driven by things like the quality of one's relationships, health, and leisure time, and money isn't a factor. The phrase we're discussing, though, and we need to keep that in mind, is quite a vague statement of money in general not being able to buy happiness overall. Perhaps it's not about being super rich, but what about even just being comfortable nowadays means to be rich, or at least upper middle class. If one has a low income lifestyle, it would still revolve around financial constraints. For example, money and considerations to buy something, or not, that may seem like a small purchase that one shouldn't have to worry about whether to buy or save, such as a food item. Or this could even become more concerning with the necessary payments for healthcare. Like, do you pay more to see a healthcare professional when needed, or wait it out and pay less for an appointment booked months later? Small or not so small things like this are very real experiences for people. If in that sense, money can buy you your needs with comfort rather than having to worry and stress about not having enough to afford even such things, wouldn't money buy happiness then? I personally say yes. Of course, money is just one of many determinants of happiness, and it's not going to solve all your problems nor make you happy on its own, but it can probably help quite a bit in allowing you to enjoy life a bit more comfortably and help contribute to a happier life. What are your thoughts so far? Like, especially on the example of just worrying about money, and in terms of like buying your food. Like, you don't want to spend money on lunch and you're being very picky because you're like, oh, do I want to spend this much on this food, even though like you may need lunch. And someone who's financially, I guess we could say financially abundant, for example, they wouldn't think in that limiting mindset that, oh, I need to worry about money. They just choose what they want and they'll just have it and enjoy that in the moment. So share your thoughts in the comments below. I'm really interested to hear whatever you have to say about any of these topics that I talk about. I really like what was said in an article by Michael Scram and how he worded it, so I'm going to share it with you. Quoting, he wrote, "Just because I don't believe that money doesn't buy happiness doesn't mean that I believe the opposite. I recognize that money is not the sole determinant of happiness. Other factors in life, health, friends, love, and an enjoyment of work, play a part as well. However, you'll be in better health if you can afford medical care, a gym membership, and nutritious food. Friendships are easier to maintain when you can afford dinners, movies, and nights out. And as for love, a study by Kansas State University found that arguments over money were the greatest predictor of divorce." That's interesting. Here's another quote that gives more thoughts and perspective to this topic. "Money can't buy happiness, but the absence of money can cause unhappiness. Money buys freedom, intellectual freedom, freedom to choose who you vote for, to choose what you want to do professionally. But having what I call FU, money, requires a huge amount of discipline. The minute you go a penny over, then you lose your freedom again. If money is the cause of your worry, then you have to restructure your life." That was quoted by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. I recently came across a podcast video on YouTube from the School of Greatness, hosted by Lewis Howes, featuring Dean Graziosi, and I'm going to share a very short snippet from that episode that was very impactful to me. It made me think, wow, I didn't properly think of it in that way before, and I just had a light bulb moment. Dean said something that completely made me realize how true this was in terms of what money gives you, and that's choice. I was just stunned thinking, wait, that perspective really says something. Having money likely gives you more choice in being able to choose how you spend your time too, which is also a predictor of happiness, allowing greater autonomy and opportunity to make choices that enhances one's well-being and boost happiness. Being able to have more of that control over your life means you also have more freedom in being able to live the life you want to live, and that freedom and choice would support the association with money bringing happiness. Back to that podcast I mentioned, Dean basically said that when you don't have money, you don't realize that. When money is lacking in your life, it is the focus all the time. For example, he says, if someone grabbed your throat and squeezed it, the only thing you'd probably be thinking about in that time is oxygen, because you're abundant in oxygen right now and have that. You're not really thinking about it because it's not on your mind. And as humans, we generally tend to be focusing on what you lack too. So then the examples mentioned are, for example, I do that for my kids or partner or friend, etc. But I can't. I'd love to take that holiday vacation trip, but I can't. I'd love to do my own thing, and because I'm tired of this unfulfilling job, but I can't. I'd love to go to that sports game or concert, but I can't. And then it all boils down to money in these situations and cases, Dean says. And then he says this powerful statement on what money brings and allows you, and it's that if you have the money, you're in control of your decisions, you're in control of your calendar. And he goes on to say that he didn't realize he spent so much of his life being choked, and it was money, and he watched that growing up, and that's how his parents lived. And this becomes about not being able to do a lot of things because of the fact of money limiting the choices you have in life to do so, and the many activities and things that need it. And because why? Because of not having money. To do a lot of things in our society, such as eating out with friends, enjoying a paid music festival, unfortunately that requires money, and that's the reality we live in. And so money becomes something important and necessary for us to live more comfortably, thinking in terms of what it brings for us, basic needs like shelter, food, water, paying for bills, and the next benefits following up from those. And then, so those basic needs, we can link this to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs framework that suggests human motivation stems from 5 fundamental categories of needs, listing from the bottom to the top: physiological, safety, love, esteem, and self-actualization. The theory proposes that each need higher in the hierarchy can be met once the previous needs have first been sufficiently met and satisfied. Then as individuals progress through these, it assumes they would experience a greater sense of fulfillment and motivation. The money relation to this would start with the first 2 needs at the bottom of the pyramid, physiological and safety. Physiological needs would include our most essential needs and biological requirements for survival, including food, water, shelter, sleep, clothing, and air. Once those are met, safety needs would be the next of closest relevance, such as things like personal security, financial security, employment, health, and resources. These are things money can help us have, and without money or enough of it to allow us to have these physiological and safety needs met sufficiently, it's harder to fulfill other stages after that and above that. Something to also note in regards to Maslow presenting these needs in a hierarchy, though, is that it's also acknowledged meeting each is not all or nothing, and one doesn't have to be met for the next to exist or occur. You can partially meet them, but it tends to be that the lower hierarchy needs are usually met with the most progression. After all, life is not a simple one stage at a time, orderly structured direction of sorts. Bringing it all back, can money buy happiness? I believe so. Yes. But we need to explain our reasoning and expand on that phrase beyond the simplified single sentence. Another written conclusion to think about this topic is this quoted statement that high income buys life satisfaction, but not happiness, and that low income is also associated both with low life evaluation and low emotional well-being. This can contribute to more of our thinking on this idea and extend to thoughts on the differences between life satisfaction and happiness. A whole other area of discussion that links to money and happiness versus money and life satisfaction. Now, I want to conclude on this topic that although there is a connection between money and happiness, we should also be aware of not putting overemphasis on money's association and happiness, as everyone has their own definition of happiness and what it means for them. Happiness is also a hard to define word where there are varied definitions and what that looks like for different people. It also includes not only money or income levels, but also other factors such as physical and mental health, relationships, one's personal time or leisure, feelings of purpose or meaning in life. Money can't buy everything in the world, but if used wisely and spent on things that bring positive emotions and feelings and enhance our well-being, money can indeed bring happiness and improve our lives. Oh my gosh, I thought this episode was going to be much longer, but it's only 19 minutes, but definitely longer than the first episode. Anyways, thank you so much for listening to this SWO episode on sitting with quotes and discussing the phrase, money can't buy happiness. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this topic and what you agree and disagree with, so comment down below. This is a safe space to freely express your thoughts, feelings, and experiences, so if you'd like to share, please feel free to do so in the comments. I'm interested to hear everyone's perspectives and views on this deep discussion topic around money and happiness. Hope you enjoyed thinking about this with me, and thanks again for tuning in to the Sitting With Ourselves podcast, and hope to see you again next time. Bye, soulful beings!